Lake Forest podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Michelle Parno has lived and worked in Lake Forest for over 2 decades. Michelle's lending experience, when combined with her real estate expertise, makes her an invaluable asset to her clients as they navigate their home buying or selling process. Call Michelle now at 847-528-8721, 847-528-8721. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. Owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich, they are a cannabis cultivation center focusing on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Laracy and Company CPAs, founded in 2010 by Lake Forest's own Brian Laracy, specializes in tax preparation and bookkeeping services. Earning the People Love Us on Yelp award, their process is straightforward. Just upload, review, and file. For a free quote, visit LaracyCPA.com now. That's LARISEYCPA.com. I'm excited to share with you something special from our Lake Forest community, the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa, located at 775 North Bank Lane in Lake Forest near Wisconsin Avenue. This just isn't any spa. They offer an amazing blend of traditional spa services plus the added benefit of medical procedures and treatments. In a relaxing and luxurious spa environment, you can enjoy a range of cosmetic and aesthetic treatments. These are all performed under the supervision of top medical professionals. The Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa provides skin care, facial rejuvenation, body contouring, laser hair removal, Botox, dermal fillers, chemical peels, and much more. What's great is that each treatment is tailored not just to enhance your appearance, but also to address specific skin concerns and to promote overall well-being. So if you're looking to pamper yourself and take your beauty routine to the next level, give the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa a call at 224-768-8028 or visit them at their location on North Bank Lane. It's an experience your skin will thank you for. We'd also like to say we're thankful for our Patreon supporters, Otto, John C., Helen, Herrick, and J.M.
Good morning.
Hey, Ryan.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Ryan. So this is your neighbor, Joe?
Well, I live by part of open lands, but open lands is a lot of places.
Yeah, we have a lot of neighbors. We have about 500 neighbors in town last time I counted it up. I actually live over in the 4th Ward. So, Joe, I believe you're 3rd Ward, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Pete's in what? What ward are you, Pete?
East side, 1st Ward.
Well, I'm a convert. I grew up in Lake Bluff. And then when my wife and I decided to move back here 22 years ago, it was just supposed to be for one summer to help her mother with a broken ankle, and we haven't left. We settled down in Evanston originally, and then ended up in the 4th Ward, and haven't moved since. Raised 2 kids here. It's been terrific. How long have you guys been in Lake Forest?
Let's see, 2018 for me, I think.
Awesome.
2022 for me. So we're both newcomers. Well, I guess Pete is technically no longer a newcomer, but 5 years is the newcomers club.
I'm always a newcomer.
Congratulations, by the way. I was checking out your YouTube channel. You guys are getting some views. Very successful. It's awesome.
Don't look too much into that. It all depends on it's been a slow news cycle here. I think it might pick up, but however you do the hashtags and keywords, who knows? Plus, I think we're getting a little throttling going on by our friends in California, but I know it's not political.
Oh, Lake Forest, California. There is a Lake Forest, California.
Yeah.
Well, it's a slow news cycle if I'm here.
No, this is a busy day. Ryan, so you're the CEO of Open Lands? Is that your title?
Correct, president and CEO. So I oversee the whole operation. And started off in programming on our land side, and did that for about 10 years, and then switched over to land protection, and then worked my way through the executive team, and became, took over at the helm when my predecessor retired in 2022.
Why don't you tell everybody what is open lands? Because I don't know if everyone understands what open lands exactly is.
Sure. Well, I mean, our mission is that we're an independently funded conservation and education organization devoted to preserving and stewarding our incredible local natural landscapes. Excuse me, and then making sure that all feel welcome and are able to fully experience nature. So we have been able to preserve about currently we're about 900 acres. Um, if I were a betting man, I would say by the time we celebrate our 58th birthday next June, we'll probably be over 1,000. We have quite a few projects still in the hopper. We're still protecting and preserving land. We also have a full-time educational department. So we have four full-time people that do programming. I mean, this month alone, I think we had 19 different programs because we firmly believe, if we just preserve these things and put them on a shelf, but don't get people involved with them, then, they might not last. Following that logic model of knowledge builds wisdom and wisdom builds compassion. You got to get people to understand it and know about it so that they care about it.
Joe, how did you connect with Ryan?
Well, I live in the Middle Fork subdivision, which I believe was a planned development in conjunction with open lands. And every year, you guys have one of the most amazing events, I think, on the North Shore. And it's really a lot of folks outside of Lake Forest don't know about it. I didn't know about it till the real estate agent who was showing our house to us that we ended up buying told us about it. Bagpipes and Bonfire. And you just had it last month, but why don't you talk a little bit about that event? Because it's just, there's so many parts to it that I find so interesting, so different than any other event I can think of.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when I meet with my peers, fellow executive directors of land trusts, and there's about 1,400 or so of us across the country. We've been able to preserve more land than the national parks combined. They say, wait, you have an event where you have that many people out on one of your sites once a year? It's pretty darn incredible. So this year was, I think, our 37th year. We started in 88. And it kind of stemmed from just some seasonal traditions. Our first preserve was behind Howard Van Doren Shaw's summer estate, which is called Ragdale, which is now the Artist Foundation. And so that whole meadow behind there was our first land project. Actually, land conservation was happening back there before we were even formed. And I can get back to that in a minute. But they used to clean up the brush and, from cleaning the trails, and would have kind of a fall burn. And, prescribed burning is also part of our natural disturbance cycle here. So in the fall and in the spring, we do quite a bit of prescribed burning on our sites because it's very healthy for the land. And so managing now, over 900 acres of land, we tend to generate quite a bit of material, brush, the invasive species during our land stewardship practices, and we save them all up for this big bonfire at the end of the summer. With the Scottish traditions of this region, bagpipers were injected into this as an event early on. And so it used to actually be held on the meadow right behind Ragdale. They were very gracious. And by, I think, 2001 was the last time we held it there. And I was actually working seasonally for the organization at the time, and it was just incredible because if you can imagine, that was just a couple of weeks after 9/11, and so it was a very somber event, but really special to have everybody come together like that. And so in 2002, we moved it over to Joe's neighborhood when I think there was still quite a few vacant lots over there, and LFOLA Farm at the time was still a spruce tree forest. You couldn't even see any of that garden. It had been completely overgrown, and there were 60-foot tall trees. And it gave us the space to grow and build that event for different engagement levels. And so I know folks often wonder how do we combine a giant fire, 100 bagpipers, and skydivers? And so the skydivers started actually after we had moved to the Middle Fork site. Originally, we used to have hot air balloons, and they were on site, and they were so unpredictable with the wind and the weather, and getting them to clean those things up as we're lighting this giant fire. It just became kind of a logistical hurdle that more often than not disappointed more than it gave to the attendees. And so we thought, all right, what else can we do? So we said skydivers and kilts. And there's been a couple years where they they've been either shut down by the FAA or weather or whatever, but they have a much higher success rate.
I mean, that to me is the exclamation point on the event, because I've told you this on the phone, and I think I've talked about it on previous podcasts with Pete, but imagine a meeting where you're sitting around the conference table and someone says, and let's bring skydivers in. I mean, people were like,
it's amazing. And the guy that leads the band, I think his name is Bob or Bruce Boyle. I'm blanking on his first name. Next year is going to be his 30th year. And he's the one that I think it's a dozen or 13 or 14 different pipe bands. We had a new band from Indiana come up. He organizes all of them. And then the guy that's leading them, that does all of the theatrics with the baton and everything, he's actually internationally renowned. He's a competitor in that. And so he comes in from California. It's just incredible. And the guys doing the caber toss and the stones and the Scottish Highland Games, that's actually a sanctioned event that it counts towards their season.
We had Mayor Pandaleon on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said that you guys set some attendance records. Can you get into that, or is this private?
No, I'd be happy to. So, this event has had a lot of different iterations over the last 30 plus years. Most significantly was after COVID. And we basically had to rebuild all of our partnerships. A lot of the folks that we partnered to cater the event and deal with the logistics closed up shop, unfortunately. And one of the most special things, I don't know if you remember this, Pete. This might have been before you were here, Joe. During the 2020 September, we kind of crowdsourced it, and we hired 30 different bagpipers to go to different parks. And so for me, it was Everett School, the park behind there. And we had a bagpiper there, and they were throughout town. And we sent out invitations, and it was like everybody coming out of the woodwork. You hadn't seen the whole neighborhood together. And I mean, there wasn't a dry eye at the place. It was pretty incredible. So as far as attendance, we've had to kind of rebuild a lot of the amenities and the partners. And this year was the second highest of all time. So we were at 1752. The all-time record was in 2017, and we were over 1,800. And what was really cool, we actually had our hot wash meeting yesterday morning on the event with all hands. And a common feedback was, hey, was attendance down this year? It didn't seem like there was that many people, which means we got the layout right, and it wasn't too congested, and people felt like there was enough space and enough amenities. A really cool thing that we added this year in partnership with the city of Lake Forest was a water bottle filling station. So they were able to run an RV potable water hose to the spigot over at LFOLA, and then there's a consortium of all the folks that use Lake Michigan water. You can get this trailer that filters the water and then has multiple stations. And so it reduced our impact. We didn't have to have plastic water bottles.
Can we drink out of the hose?
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the football days for sure. And it was a newer hose, and I did get the feedback, yeah, it tasted a little hosey. And so the guys at the water plant, it's no cost to North Shore communities to rent this thing. They said they were going to run some baking soda through it or whatever, but it was the blue hoses that are safe to drink out of. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, tell me, would you rather...
Nobody got sick, right?
No.
Would you rather have microplastics? So what are you throwing on that big pile there, Ryan? Like, what goes into that? And can I bring like my old lazy boy over there next year and just toss her in?
Oh, you can fix those things up. No, it's all natural materials, from the buckthorn, the infamous buckthorn. That's, one of our biggest challenges. But we're actually turning the corner on it. There's not too many big patches left on our sites, excitingly. It's debris. It's stuff that's supposed to be 8 inches and less so that it burns down pretty quickly and we're not smoking out Joe for weeks on end. But this year I have a feeling there was a lot of Christmas trees in there. That's what I was told. And so that thing went up quick and we had a weird wind. I can never, and I'll qualify this. I think this year was my favorite one since we held it at Ragdale in 2001. It was really special. But we had a north wind. And so if you were sitting at your house, Joe, you probably didn't get too much smoke that night. But normally, at sunset, you get an easterly or a westerly. Usually it's an easterly off the lake. We had a north wind, and that went up quick with all those Christmas trees.
Wait, where did the Christmas trees come from? Like you hold on to them for that long to throw them in there?
Oh, I believe they're already building it for next year. It starts right away.
Yeah, the pile is still over there. If you drive by, there's still kind of a pile there. And it burns. The Monday morning after the event, it's still burning. Now, much smaller, and the fire department is standing by in case there's something goes out of control. They have their little truck there.
What are you talking about? Ryan's sitting out there with his hose, his lazy boy with his sun hat on.
Early on in my career, before we had kids, my wife and I used to go and babysit it, especially if it coincided with homecoming weekend. I don't want to give any kids any ideas listening here, but yeah, I mean, kids these days, I think, are a little bit more better behaved than when I was at
I don't know. I have a senior in high school. I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
And it was the day after homecoming, as I recall. I think the event's on a Sunday, and Saturday night was the homecoming dance.
That's the only football game that I've been to this year, and sadly, that I believe it was a loss. My wife and I are kind of relearning our schedule. We've had varsity football players for the last 5 years, and now they're both in college. And so we kind of have some time back in our schedule of not having to go to every football game.
We enjoy it. We enjoy those games.
How long does it take for that to go out? Like, seriously, whoever's out there holding the garden hose, how long they got to stay out there? And then are you the one that says, okay, it's officially donezo?
I delegate that one, Pete. That's a great question.
To the fire department, I hope.
To our director of land stewardship. But, it depends on the year. It's funny. Sometimes, because we have a lot of decorations that go into the event, hay bales, pumpkins, corn stalks, all these things. And sometimes we try and donate them, to farms and folks that can recycle them, but sometimes we can't. And we put hay bales in there, and believe it or not, those are so dense that after that thing burns down, they're still there. They don't burn. And so sometimes there's old hay bales in there, but I would say by the Wednesday or Thursday after, typically it's not smoking anymore.
Okay. Now, to get ready for next year, for the people that aren't sitting on the back of a pickup truck like me and Joe watching the thing now that's a fire. Like, it's sold out, I heard. Like, what do you got to do in advance to get ahead of the game for next year? When do the tickets go on sale? What are the options? Just so we can get it in our mind what to do.
Absolutely. So tickets go on sale for the patron level in late July, early August. And so there's 3 different patron levels. There's our patron ticket, which includes a buffet dinner and an area where you can set up kind of Ravinia style, set up your blanket and watch the events and everything. Then we have our Order of the Tartan, and they have their own, let's just say off the top of my head, 40 by 60 tent, a different kind of food buffet. Each of these has bars as well. And then they have kind of a Oktoberfest style picnic table area where you can sit. And then there's the Grand Tartans, and that's essentially like the VIP small tents for groups of 10, and a different catering level and a different bar with different scotches and that kind of stuff. Those all go on sale late July, early August. General admission is BYOB everything, except for we have coffee, we have water, and we have donuts from Fire Cake, the donut shop food truck, and they are amazing. But that's truly Ravinia style, and that wasn't the way the event was before COVID. It had a buffet, and the ticket price was $150. But now for general admission, it's 75. We wanted to make it more accessible. So that starts in early August as well. And then it closes, I think, either the Thursday or the Friday before the event. And then walk-ups, it is the price of the ticket general admission goes up to $150 for walk-up. So if you want to go general admission, you got to get it, by the end of the work week, the week of.
And that's on the Open Lands website?
It's on the Open Lands website, and I believe, I don't have my phone in front of me, but I believe it's always the last Sunday in September. So I think that's the 29th next year or the 28th.
Now, is that the major source of your funds, or you get donations? Like, let's get more into the open lands, because I'm confusing it with like the forest preserve and the referendum that's on the thing we're voting for. Can you answer those two things?
Sure. There might have been more than two things there, though. Let's see. I'll try and get them all.
2.6.
So we
my brain is a storm.
We're independently funded. So what that means, and we're one of the largest, maybe the largest nonprofit in Lake Forest that does not have any assistance or tailwinds from the city, meaning, we're not using City of Lake Forest facilities. We're not renting City of Lake Forest buildings for our operations. We're completely independent. We receive no local tax revenue. We have gotten pretty good and had a fairly high success rate over the last 10 years at getting federal grants. And so we do receive some federal grants on large-scale restoration projects and our education initiatives, but we receive no local tax dollars. Excuse me. So Bagpipes is the biggest single fundraiser of the year. We're going into our annual giving campaign for end of year giving. And so those materials are going out to our donors as we speak. That's also a big source of our revenue. We have a membership program that starts in the spring. And then we have a spring fundraiser called Cattails and Cocktails. And it's adults only. So it's not this multi-generational, all ages event like Bagpipes. And that's usually the middle of May, third week of May. And that's at our headquarters at Mellody Farm. And that's a really fun night too.
Wait, Mellody Farm, what's that?
So Mellody Farm with two L's, that's where our headquarters is, at the corner of Deer Path and Waukegan Road. That used to be the gatehouse for the J. Ogden Armour estate. J. Ogden Armour, son of Philip Danforth Armour, from Armour Meat, and his main house is now Lake Forest Academy. So we had this winding mile-long drive.
That's a long way from Waukegan Road out to the academy.
And I mean, it's a beautiful, come by sometime. It's a beautiful historic building. We have it all landscaped with native species. And then the property's been restored. And then I believe his property abutted the Cuneo estate, which was the Mellody Dairy out off of Milwaukee Road in Vernon Hills. And so two big tracts of land way back when. This is 1909 when the estate was built.
Before the tollway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well before the tollway was 60s. Yep.
And because now that's a shopping center there called Mellody Farm in Vernon Hills with like Whole Foods and
everything.
A couple other, yeah. But I like the restaurants in Lake Forest better than those restaurants. So, but yeah, no, it's amazing when you think about it that there's these farms that took up huge, like Conway Farm, Mellody Farm, all these different Armour that were huge properties that are now divided up into so many different things. And it's just hard to imagine that was all one thing at one time, but that's the way things were before it got developed, right?
Well, I mean, that's a good segue to kind of our provenance as a as an organization. And I will get back to your question, Pete, about Lake County as well.
You're a private forest preserve?
Well, going back to Pete's observation, or Joe's observation, excuse me, about this fabric to work within, this matrix of connected habitats that was a result of these large estates, and single ownership. And so the original problem to solve was the development plan along the Skokie River. So north of Deer Path, west of Green Bay, kind of on the east side of the golf course, you could think about it, which is our first big preserve. I think it's now about 160 acres all combined, that started in the early 60s with the Nature Conservancy preserving some remnant property. And then there was a development plan, and at the time it was Willard Jack, who was the mayor, who kind of pulled together a task force to think about how do we preserve this amazing resource. And so it was essentially an independent committee of the Nature Conservancy, and he tasked like General Charles Hafner. Volney Foster was our first board president. Volney Foster was the late Ellen Stirling's father. Amazing woman. I'm not sure if you guys get to meet her.
Ellen, Lake Forest Shop. She
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
She was the one of the founding people for Wintrust too on the board. She's big time. Great lady.
Yeah, so,
you had her on the show once, Pete.
Yeah, we had her on a couple of times.
Unfortunately, she's since passed. But
she made her 100-year anniversary. She made it to
a force of nature, and her father was the first board president of Lake Forest Open Lands. Peter Carney, Calvin Trowbridge, Ike Colburn, Gus Hart, just a bunch of really great problem solvers, and it started stitching together a plan to preserve that property. And I think it was over 40 different separate transactions, including, the last one that we acquired on that project was 2021, a little 1.5 acre parcel, but we're slowly building it together. And now you can walk in nature all the way from Deer Path up to Rockland Road up in Lake Bluff, along that creek the whole way. And similar, Middle Fork where you are, Joe, with the Carroll property, and that was an Armour estate as well. Mellody Farm, which was the Childs, had that at the time. Over in my neighborhood, Everett Farm, which was the Cowie family, that was an old tree nursery. All these great, amazing properties that were in great shape, we were able to stitch together. And so back to your question, Pete, about the Forest Preserve, I do know that they have a ballot measure on this year's election for a referendum. That's not anything that we're involved with, tactically. Speaking as private citizen, Ryan London, not on behalf of the organization. I do think it makes sense to invest in our nature as a county. 45% of all open space nationally is going to change hands in the next 15 years. And they haven't had a referendum, I believe, since 2008. And so they're overdue. I know they're out of acquisition dollars. They're out of capital investment dollars. My understanding is what this is being proposed for is all capital projects, no operations, no salary, nothing like that, to connect trails, that kind of stuff.
Ryan, so could you, I'm looking at a gray box and I still don't get it. All I hear is I got to pay more. Can you just explain it to me like I'm on the 8th grade trip through your place and tell me what this is all about?
The county referendum?
Yeah.
I will do my best. I'm not on their action committee or anything. I just kind of know what I know.
Political, just two guys talking.
So the county has, their operating budget, and they have their capital budget, and there's a huge opportunity ahead to I'm going to take a pause there right now and give you an actual example of where this could help Lake Forest Open Lands. There's a federal funding opportunity out there called the Chi-Cal Grant Initiative. It's through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, through the Donnelly Foundation, and then a bunch of federal dollars. And we want to do something along the Skokie River as far as a big Chi-Cal project. but it requires a match. I don't remember off the top of my head. Typically, it's a 65 to 35 match. So project, scope, corpus of the project, we'd have to come up with 35%. The Forest Reserve doesn't have those matching dollars anymore. They've already spent their referendum money from 2008, and so they're just in operation mode. And so this will be, a pool of funding that will allow them to acquire land. I think about 65 million of it is for acquisition. I think about 30 million of it is for stormwater management, which benefits us all because we are in a wetland part of the country. And then about 60 million of it is for infrastructure, for trails, trail connections, and that kind of stuff.
Now, what's the Forest Preserve, though? Open Lands is, as you said, a private organization. The Forest Preserve is a publicly funded organization that's run by the county. I think the county board members are also the Forest Preserve district board members, and that's the same. Pete and I grew up in Cook County, and they have a Forest Preserve, but most communities don't have an open lands. Could more communities get people together? I understand Lake Forest is traditionally more affluent than a lot of communities, but could people come together and form more open lands with private donations so they're not as dependent on tax dollars and referendums and stuff like that?
That's a great question. There's one less line on our tax bills as Lake Forest residents, which is we don't have a park district, right? And I think we are one of the kind of OG private public partnerships for open space here locally. And I think, there's a lot of benefits to that. We obviously can't operate at a scale. We're at, 900 acres. The Forest Preserve is at 31,000 acres. So there's some efficiencies there, but we are also a little bit more nimble and agile and can turn on some stuff a lot quicker, especially on land acquisitions than a Forest Preserve. But it takes, those folks that I was just mentioning from the 1960s. I mean, those are titans of industry, brilliant legal minds. It took, a lot of enterprise and brain trust from the community to be able to get this organization off the ground and running. And it was all volunteer until 1984 when we hired our first executive director. So, almost 20 years of just volunteer work. And we've helped and mentored some other organizations get off the ground. I used to be on the board of the Prairie State Conservation Coalition, which is the statewide coalition of land trusts, and got to see kind of a neat nexus of that organization's evolution, where we hired our first executive director a couple of years ago, and they're off and running. And I certainly would be open to advising and helping other small groups get underway, but it is a pretty big lift out of the gate, Joe.
There is a Lake Bluff open lands, is that correct?
There is, yes. And there's a lot of open land. And, that kind of came out of some of our local history. Hopefully I don't go too deep in the rabbit hole here, but, 1964 had the Wilderness Act, right? And not too long after that was, the Transformational Civil Rights Act too. So just an amazing amount of change. And that kind of spurred on a lot of awareness. And you had a lot of folks writing books like Rachel Carson about the environment. You had kind of this renaissance for the environment, which spurred, I think, the interest in doing this. And so you have quite a few folks with the word or the title open lands nationally, not just here, but we're all independent. We just share a name. We don't have some, we don't share a bank account or a board or anything like that. But it's pretty incredible that we were able to establish ourselves to the level that we did. Even before the Clean Water Act was 72. Yeah, we just had the 50th a couple of years ago. So kind of ahead of their time. And a lot of that stems from a guy named George Fell, who founded the Illinois Nature Preserve System, which is the highest level of land protection in the state. We have a couple sites that are Illinois Nature Preserve. And it's a multi-year long process that has to go all the way up to the governor for signature. But he started that. He also started the Nature Conservancy. He was an interesting guy, this kind of iconoclastic guy that had big ideas, but inevitably seemed to get kicked out of the organizations that he founded. And his last stop was an amazing place out near Rockford called the Natural Land Institute, a group that I consider a leader across the state.
Is the Forest Preserve a competitor? That's the, my mind goes to that way. Are you guys competing for funds, or how is it different? You want your own little cut and they want theirs? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around.
So I think the sandbox philosophy for philanthropy certainly was an approach that people used back in the day, but I don't see it that way, and I think most people don't see it that way anymore. We're into collaboration, and I do not see the Forest Preserve as a competitor. We are in great communication. Our goals are the same: to preserve amazing pieces of property and to get people to care about it and out there and using it. And so, early on, we were actually carrying the torch on the Middle Fork. We commissioned all the studies. We're actually working on a history project where we're going to be putting some interpretive panels out on our sites telling that story about the Forest Preserve. But ultimately, it made sense for the Forest Preserve to own that property and care for that property and invest in it to a capacity that we weren't able to. When I started here in my career, there were no trails out there at the Middle Fork. And I'm not sure that we would have been able to do what the Forest Preserve has done beautifully.
And that's the largest savanna east of the Mississippi, or what's the?
It's a tall grass savanna. It used to be called black soil savanna, but the proper ecological term is tall grass savanna, which means it is basically a prairie and a savanna combined in it. So it just has some of the highest biodiversity that you're going to find anywhere. Northeast Illinois has the most species listed in the entire state, so threatened or endangered. I wish we were out on a hike right now and I could be my wife calls it the drag and brag, where I point out all
He would be all
stuff.
sweaty at this point in the show. Then
you pull my cooler, I'll go with you.
Yeah, there's
BYOB.
Amazing nature, amazing nature experiences. And we have a preserve that's walkable from every ward in the city now. We don't have a preserve in Ward 1, but our Skokie River is just across the street.
Yeah, we got the beach.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wake up every morning and the beach is a beautiful view. Don't get me wrong. You can't beat Lake Michigan, but
you're a West Sider.
But that view of the Savannah, Middle Fork, the whole thing in the morning with the sun coming up.
I got goosebumps, Joe. I got goosebumps. We call it the Western Shore. I don't know. It's like picking your favorite child. I don't think you could pick one or the other, but they're both incredible.
Ryan, they got you from I can't remember. You had a camping background, didn't you?
So I do have a wilderness affinity. When I was in college, I used to guide for the outing club. I went to University of Vermont and would take people on hiking trips and ice climbing trips. And then my wife also, we both are graduates of National Outdoor Leadership School, Knowles, and done a lot of wilderness travel. Our honeymoon, we went camping out of our Volkswagen camper. It drove across country, broke down a couple of times. It was awesome. And so my volunteer work, I'm involved with a national organization. It's actually the oldest environmental 501c3 in the country for environmental education. And so we do youth-driven wilderness experiences all across North America, primarily throughout remote Canada. So we put kids on buses at the border, and they'll take a 24-hour bus ride north to the northern edge of Saskatchewan or Ontario, or all the way up to Churchill on Hudson Bay, and do canoe trips.
You grew up in Lake Bluff, you said. Did you go to Lake Forest High School?
My wife and I are both alum of Lake Forest High School, and then I have two sons who both went to Lake Forest High School. One of the prouder things that I've experienced as a father, they both were recipients of the National Scholarship with the Marine Corps, and they're on the path to becoming Marine officers.
That's terrific.
Thank them for their service.
Thank you. That's great. When you were in high school, I'm just curious, had you developed this love of nature and this activity? Were there things going on at the school or in your life that led you to that career path?
So my career path started with this stuff. I grew up in Lake Bluff in a savanna, and I had a neighbor. I had two neighbors that had fully grown children, and so they were elderly, and they kind of took me under their wing and would show me the various plants, and I volunteered with Lake Bluff Open Lands. I learned about prescribed burning, which for a teenager, how do you say no to that? Um, and then but my primary connection to nature was through recreation, and I knew I wanted to do something with the environment. So I went to college, started studying environmental studies, got really depressed. It was doom and gloom. It was not solutions based. It was like how much we'd really messed everything up. And I was home on winter break one year, and my mom saw an ad in the Lake Forester. Shout out to the old Lake Forester print newspaper um, for a summer job for $6 an hour. So called them up, went out and interviewed on a cold January day with some board members that were cross country skiing, and was hired to be an intern with Lake Forest Open Lands that very next summer, which oddly enough, my wife was also hired to be an intern. And that's how we met. She's a couple years older than me. She was a senior when I was a freshman, actually dated one of my best friend's older brothers in high school. And then we've been together ever since. And so I went back, and my experience that summer with Lake Forest Open Lands and working with their volunteers and staff showed me that you could actually make a difference in one morning, in one day, in one week, and heal the land and work with the land, doing restoration. And I was inspired. It kind of got me out of my rut, and I went back to school and focused the emphasis of my major on restoration ecology.
Ryan, the reason I brought up the camping aspect was
Uh-huh.
we had COVID, and people needed to be isolated, and you saw a spike in people camping, and then everybody said, well, the pandemic's over and it's going to drop down, and I'm seeing it take off more than ever before. I mean, there's camping's an American thing, to go out, find a piece of land and hang out. What's your thoughts on that?
I think nature is an American thing. I mean, the fundamental of economics is natural resources, and so it's part of our. I think it's patriotic to be embracing nature and understanding, pre-settlement conditions, and making sure that we're stewarding this amazing resource. The value proposition with camping can't be beat. We actually, so with our environmental education programming, we do send groups out, like to Yellowstone. We send them on local overnights. We have a program called the Center for Conservation Leadership, which is focused at breaking down barriers to nature. And so working with marginalized communities to do things like camping, fishing. We had a birding hike this September with a group of kids that had never held binoculars before. And, we had Dexter Patterson, who's the Wisco birder, founded the BIPOC Birding Club of Wisconsin, come down and lead the hike. And he calls these experiences windows into wonder. Windows into wonder. So, our work day to day for folks using the preserves, we think, is a key ingredient in the equation of public health. Clean air, clear water, mental health, all these things. Nature is a key component of that. And it's tough to beat the immersive experience of camping. We sent a group for the first time up to Ontario, Canada this summer for a week. First time. I mean, these kids didn't have passports. Got them passports. Got them through the border. Got them on a canoe trip. Caught fish for the first time, and it's transformational. And we work with partners like Waukegan to College and other nonprofits where they can take these transformational experiences and turn them into career paths as well.
I know what your answer is going to be on this, but the state parks, I mean, Roosevelt, I think Teddy was the big one, that was a big proponent of, saving all this area and doing the state. The reason why I bring up camping, state parks and whatnot, it's like a gateway drug to say, you know what, you better put your money into this or you're not going to have that.
Absolutely. It's that, knowledge, interest, compassion, logic model that I was talking about. And so how do you vote for something like a referendum without understanding the true benefits of nature? How do you, and I know that's a big leap, but how do you say, I'm going to plant a tree in my backyard? An oak tree and we're in October, Oaktober right now. And so a single oak tree can support 534 different native species, one oak tree. And so I don't know when you guys publish these podcasts, but this Saturday is our tree sale. And so folks, it's at our headquarters from 8 till noon. So Mellody and Deer Path, or Waukegan and Deer Path, and educating folks to know, all right, what's the appropriate tree to plant in their yard, thinking about native landscaping, thinking about lawns as kind of a habitat desert versus planting rain gardens and other pollinators and that kind of stuff, because the bottom line is nature's too fragmented to be able to survive on its own. We have to give it as much assistance as we can. And you brought up state parks. I believe Illinois Beach was the first state park. I know it was the first state park in Illinois, which George Fell, that guy that I mentioned, but previously was a key proponent of. And I think it was one of the first attempts by any state to do that internally as a state system. So it's pretty cool.
There's state parks and then there's national parks,
right?
Like Yellowstone and all that. Those are national parks that are run by the federal government. Then there's state parks like Beach Park that are run by the state government. Then you have the forest preserves that are, I guess, run by counties, or at least they are here. So there's all sorts of different things setting aside land that otherwise would get developed like all the other land. A lot of suburbs, I think one of the things that draws people to Lake Forest is the amount of open space compared to a lot of other suburbs that just developed every square inch it could, either into residential or commercial property. And in the long run, that's probably, I'm going to guess, has helped increase property values in Lake Forest far greater than some of these other communities that developed everything, right? I mean, the open lands helps grow the economics of a community in a way.
It would be an interesting study to actually try and quantify it, but I think there's a really good seat of the pants evaluation that you could do. Go next time you're on Zillow, look at a map and look at all the listings. And if it's next to one of our sites, 90% of the time they mention that it's next to one of our sites. And so I think there's definitely some passive value there. But there's a lot of active value too. I mean, you think of flooding and stormwater. Our sites are surge banks when there's flooding and stormwater to hold all that. If that was all developed, it would have no place to go. And so I know we still have quite a bit of stormwater problems to solve as a community, but it's not as bad as other communities south of us that have a far higher, denser development rate. And you think about, our core values as a community. I was excited to see Lake Forest Open Lands mentioned in the city's new strategic plan. But, we think about values, community values and preserving them. And I know a lot of the processes in town with building and whatnot are pretty onerous at times, but that's to protect and to preserve those values. And I think our work with open space mirrors that.
Ryan, you can choose not to answer this because you're, Lake Bluff guy, but you're also an environmentalist guy, and I am not. What is the deal with the Lake Bluff Golf Course and all the stuff that's going on there? Like, what are this? I'm not telling you to pick a side, but like, what is the issue? It's too wet there. Can we make it? They want to make it an open lands. Like, what is I hear people talking about it, but I don't understand what the issue is.
Sure. And I have not had any conversations with anybody about that. So I don't know too many details. I'm gonna just make my quick 5,000 foot read on it. It's a long, and I've golfed the Lake Bluff Golf Course. My first job ever was a swim aide at Blair Park for $2 an hour when I was, I think, 9 or 10 years old. Uh, it's along the Skokie River, which the Skokie River really shouldn't be a river. It was channelized and ditched twice. Um, the first time in the teens, and I guess the second time. And I wish, there was an Anderson on this call who could fact check me, but they actually did that. They did the engineering on it. They have the best records in the whole county.
So wait, hold on. They were digging it out to move water from where to provide water. Like, why'd they do that?
Well, this was all wetland.
Okay.
And so the area was about a mile wide swath of wetland. A clunkier name would be swamp. And so they ditched it to get it off the land as fast as possible. And so a lot of what we do as an organization when we get a new site is to reverse those hydrological disturbances. And so we've got a brand new preserve on Wesley Road in between Ridge and Waukegan called the Carruthers Nature Preserve, which is opening up this month with accessible trails, boardwalks. It's got a handicap accessible fishing pier all the way at the end on a lake. But while we were doing, and we acquired that property in 2007, and so it's taken us a while to get it into service.
Wow, 7 years.
Yeah, well, 2007 was when we acquired it. And so yeah.
Wait, even 17 years. Whoa, my math.
Almost
Sorry.
20 years. Yeah, I like to say we bought the heck out of that place in 2007. But anyway, we removed all the drain tiles. So you had this agricultural product that was promoted, over 100 years ago to put in ceramic tile and drain the farm fields so that they could be more workable. Because again, lots of wetlands here. We're in the wetland capital of the world in Illinois, and that needed to go somewhere. Those pipes. So it went to the Skokie. And then that, which was ditched, it never was a straight channel. It was just kind of a wetland area. And then that goes to the Chicago River. And then that goes to the Illinois now with the reversal, and it goes up to Mississippi. And all that sediment is causing that big dead zone down at the mouth of the Mississippi in the Gulf of Mexico. And so the more that we can do parcel by parcel to remove those pipes, to restore the natural hydrology, the better we are as a region, as a nation, as a hemisphere for our water quality. And I suspect just because of the location of the golf course in Lake Bluff along the Skokie, they were probably attempting to use best management practices to restore some of those wetlands. Now, always you run into these conflicts with land use, whether it's, development or golf course or whatever it is. And I believe that's all been put to bed now. Last time I heard, I'm not sure if it's still an ongoing debate, but that's what I know about and can guess about it, Pete.
Fair enough. People keep talking about it. They don't know if it's over or not. I'm just trying to know what the issue is. So when idiots bring it up, I can say, shut up.
Our golf course. So the idea, I've seen, I lived in a community that overdeveloped and had a lot of flooding. Our basement would flood anytime there was more than like 2 inches of rain. So we had to buy like an expensive flood control system for our house. But the thing is, like, if you have grass, it's what they call, what is it, permeable? Or there's a whole thing about permeable surface area when you do a development. But is a golf course worse in terms of absorbing water after rains than a forest preserve or an open land?
I don't know if it comes down to worse. I don't know if you could quantify it between better or worse. I mean, they are heavily engineered so that, they're usable and they don't have water, actually standing on them. So I imagine, and I don't know exactly, depending on the engineering of them, where it goes, whether it's, dry sumps and gravel underneath these things. And so when we do natural areas restoration, we try and get it to be above the ground because that's where all the magic happens with the habitat. That's where you get the dragonfly laying their larvae. And those are the number one mosquito controllers, both while they're in their larval stage in the water, as well as when they're flying around. So keeping it above the surface, above the ground, as much as possible is what we shoot for when we're doing natural areas restoration. And I'm not sure if golf courses would take that same approach, but I don't know.
Yeah, we're covering it all here, Ryan. You got this sale on Saturday. We'll close out the show here because we're getting that time. Ryan, what's going on this Saturday that I will clip out and get out early so we can put it out there to get more people over there, because we're big fans of Ryan London and Open Lands.
Well, thanks, Pete. So this Saturday is our fall tree and shrub sale. You can pre-sale and fill up your shopping cart on our website. I don't know exactly when it closes, but it usually closes down a couple of days before the sale. But there will be day of selections, and we'll have our full-time ecologists and experts on hand to be able to meet with you, hear about what problems you're trying to solve in your yard, whether you have a rain garden you're trying to grow or you're trying to get more pollinators through, and they'll help you select the right native species to not only benefit your yard, but benefit the whole community, because the birds, the butterflies, the beneficial insects, they don't see the property lines. They can't tell the difference between our preserve and Joe's yard across the street. And so that we really see it as one big nature preserve. And the more native plants out there in the community, the more resilient and healthier we are as a whole.
What am I buying there, Ryan?
They're small DIY sized tree and shrubs that can fit in your car. If you've got a buddy with a pickup truck, I would suggest you maybe tap them. Or I've even seen people drop the tops in their convertible and put trees in the back seat too.
And you've got other programs with Open Lands that I think we should let folks know about. You got stuff for kids, you got stuff for adults. Talk about those programs.
Absolutely. From toddlers to seniors, we make nature accessible for all. And so we've got you just go to our website and there's a calendar. We've got guided bird hikes every Monday through the fall. We've got our Tuesdays on the Trail program, which both of those, there's no fee involved, where you'll go to a different site and walk with our experts and learn what is the latest and greatest happening in the preserve. And then Saturdays, we usually have some kind of program going on, activity. I know Veterans Day, we're celebrating Take a Hike with Our Veterans on November 16th. So it's not on actual Veterans Day. It'll be that next Saturday after at our headquarters. And we're partnering with a bunch of different organizations, including the Lovell Institute up at Naval Station Great Lakes to honor our veterans and go for a hike. And we have our track-driven electric wheelchair, which is available to reserve. So we've really been focusing on making our sites more accessible, starting with the Green Nature Preserve, which is the ravine property over by Fort Sheridan. Those trails are all fully accessible via a wheelchair. And then our Carruthers Nature Preserve, which is opening this month, is wheelchair accessible. And then we're also doing a fully accessible loop river walk at our Skokie River. So you can park at Laurel Avenue if you're in a wheelchair and go do a full river walk loop through our Hafner Meadow, which is about a mile-long trail. First time we've ever had one of our river trails fully accessible. And if you're a little more adventurous but still need assistance, we have our electric track-driven wheelchair, which can be reservable on our website. And folks with cognitive disorders can also be driven by a caregiver remotely from behind, which is really cool.
Ryan, what's the website again?
It is www.lfola.org. So Lake Forest Open Lands Association.
Ryan, it's been a pleasure. We thank you for coming on the Lake Forest.
Thank you, Ryan. This has been great. Great to hear everything.
Thank you, guys.
In a couple sentences, I'm going to leave you with this one. What's with the bees? Like, what's the problem with the bees? You got 2 minutes. Go.
All right, I'm gonna have one more question for you too. But
all right, go.
The bees are struggling because it's a big issue with our food system, which is really heavily reliant on pesticides and herbicides. So it's not only the bees, but the monarchs. And so we used to have this nice ladder for the migratory insects to be able to travel through. And now they're severely disrupted. And so we have to kind of make some food forests with pollinator plants and trees along the way so that they can eat. And that's the big issue with the insects.
All right.
Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. What's a question I can answer, Ryan?
All right. Is that a bass I see in the background there?
Oh yeah, that's a
Pete,
bass.
do you slap at the bass?
They call me Root Note Pete. I am a master of memorizing tabs, and I used to be in a Blondie tribute band.
No kidding. Okay, so I was a music minor. I was a professional musician in Vermont doing my undergrad. I used to paint houses during the day and jam at a jazz trio. So we would play all the places in Burlington, but we used to play Nectar's as well, which is kind of like the famous bar in Burlington. One time our name was the Def, DEF Trance Trio, but one time we were billed as the Death Trance Trio, and so we had a whole bunch of headbangers show up for a jazz show. I mentioned how proud I was of my boys about their service path, but I would say I'm probably even more proud about the songs that they selected for their high school band when they were playing in the talent show. The first year they did Jeff Beck, Cause We've Ended as Lovers. Then they did a tribal tech for the Scott Henderson and Gary Willis, who I think is one of the best bass players of all time. That's what I played. I played the bass. They played a tribal tech song. They played Little Feat, Skin It Back. And then they did Kansas, Carry On My Wayward Son. I was like, all right, I did something right with that song selection.
I thought you were going to say Def Leppard there, but okay.
I think we can put a group together there, Ryan. Concert for the trees or something like that. We'll play
right on.
Play at Bagpipes next year, right? Or is it all bagpipe music?
No, there was a good band. It was funny. I have my type, but I mean, they were playing some band songs. They were playing some Dead, and I was talking to some of the younger staff, and they're like, I was all excited about them, and they're like, country's really not my thing. And I was like,
country's pop.
Band is not country.
Country's pop. It's all Taylor Swift. Right.
Yeah.
Ryan London, hey man, thanks for coming on Lake Forest Podcast.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great to meet you guys.
Talking about the environment. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to turn in my Republican card.
Hey, we see no colors. We see no colors. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, see your board of directors. It's very split.
That's right. Bye.
The Lake Forest Podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Michelle Parno has lived and worked in Lake Forest for over 2 decades. Michelle's lending experience, when combined with her real estate expertise, makes her an invaluable asset to her clients as they navigate their home buying or selling process. Call Michelle now at 847-528-8721, 847-528-8721. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. Owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich, they are a cannabis cultivation center focusing on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Laracy & Company CPAs, founded in 2010 by Lake Forest's own Brian Laracy, specializes in tax preparation and bookkeeping services. Earning the People Love Us on Yelp award, their process is straightforward. Just upload, review, and file. For a free quote, visit LaracyCPA.com now. That's LARISEYCPA.com.
I'm excited to share with you something special from our Lake Forest community, the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa, located at 775 North Bank Lane in Lake Forest near Wisconsin Avenue. This just isn't any spa. They offer an amazing blend of traditional spa services plus the added benefit of medical procedures and treatments. In a relaxing and luxurious spa environment, you can enjoy a range of cosmetic and aesthetic treatments. These are all performed under the supervision of top medical professionals. The Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa provides skin care, facial rejuvenation, body contouring, laser hair removal, Botox, dermal fillers, chemical peels, and much more. What's great is that each treatment is tailored not just to enhance your appearance, but also to address specific skin concerns and to promote overall well-being. So if you're looking to pamper yourself and take your beauty routine to the next level, give the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa a call at 224-768-8028 or visit them at their location on North Bank Lane. It's an experience your skin will thank you for.
We'd also like to say we're thankful for our Patreon supporters, Otto, John C., Helen, Herrick, and J.M.